We're being artistic because the lighting is fighting with me right now.
Well, that was a movie.
Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon, and today I'm giving my first thoughts on the new film by newcomer-ish Chris Nash called In a Violent Nature. I say sort of newcomer because he does have one other credit as a director called ABCs of Death 2. Never heard of that, no idea what that is, and there's 30-some directors on that are credited. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that he's the first-time writer-director of In a Violent Nature. In case you haven't heard about this movie yet, you don't know what it is a new slasher film with an artistic twist to it. It is, instead of being told from the perspective of the victims of this slasher, this killer, it is mostly from the perspective of the killer. Not that it's necessarily his thoughts or his narration or anything, but the cameraman is following him around as he does his various killings and his things that he does. And it is a very unique take on the slasher genre. It's a very different, unique, strange at times movie that has left people very split. It's got like a 5.8 and like a 65% right now. It's definitely splitting people who watch it. The people who like it saying it is very artistic, very unique, very different, very creative, and the people who are saying it's no good are saying it's extremely boring, because guess what? Everything we like about a slasher involves tension and not knowing where the killer is at every moment and wondering when he's gonna pop up next. This movie, he's there. You see him. You know what he's going to do because he's there. You're following him. You're following him as he's walking toward the people he's about to kill. So where's the tension in that? And which is it? Which do I agree with? Both, honestly. There is good and bad things about this movie. It is very unique. It's very creative. It took an interesting mind to come up with this movie, both for the style that they went with, which is very artistic at times, very unique. I keep using that word. It's a buzzword, but it is the word of the day for this movie. It's unique. And as well as the kills, they're very graphic. That's kind of what people have been leaning into. You know, supposedly people were fainting and throwing up watching this movie. I doubt that's true. They say that every time a new violent horror movie comes out, the kills are graphic for there being no money involved, because I don't know how much this movie cost. I don't know what the budget was. I couldn't find out. I tried Googling it. There was no answer, but if I had to guess, I'd say like $2, because that's what it felt like. It's very clearly low budget. There's like 1 or 2 moments of CGI that stood out. There's a lot of practical effects that are ranging. There's some that are really good, some that are pretty cheap looking. I was shocked that there was any CGI at all, because I really thought this movie was going to be too cheap for that. But there is one shot that was CGI that stood out to me that I was like, oh, okay, I didn't know they had the budget for that. And other than that shot, this really reminded me of, now having gone to some film festivals for independent filmmakers like myself, this movie looks like a really good movie I might see at one of those festivals. Higher production quality than I think anything I've seen at any of the festivals, but not much. It's in that same category as far as budget is concerned. There's no budget in this movie, so that is a hindrance, but it's still creative, still interesting with its twists and its homages to the genre, because, well, I'll get into that in a minute, but the other side of it is, yes, it is extremely boring at times, because there is no, to me, tension when you know where the killer is. The whole point is not knowing what he's going to do next. The whole point is wondering what's going to happen next. When you're following him, you always know. And so you may see him approach somebody and you're like, oh, it's coming. And so there's a little bit of anticipation, but no suspense. And that's different, and that's disappointing. This didn't feel to me like a horror movie, because I was never horrified. I was anticipating this gory event that was going to happen. So it's gory, and there's anticipation, but there's no horror. And I don't view this really as a horror movie. I view it as an artistic experiment, because somebody said, what if we completely broke all the rules of horror and saw what happened. And I get it. I believe rules are meant to be broken. Especially as an artist, you want to challenge the rules. You want to say, well, why are these rules? Let's break them. Let's break them all, see what happens. And I agree with that thought, but as somebody who has broken rules while filmmaking, I've realized that sometimes you go, I'm glad I broke that, and sometimes you go, I see why I shouldn't break that rule. I realize why that's a rule now. And this whole movie kind of felt like somebody realizing that's why that's a rule. And sure, the people involved seem talented from a filmmaking perspective. I think this director has so much potential because visually this movie was fascinating. From a gore perspective, it was creative and interesting. Even the plot had its moments of like, ooh, that could have been cooler in a different movie. And so I think overall I agree with both sides of, is this movie unique and creative and artistic? Yes, it's all of those things. Is it kind of boring? Is it not well made? Is there some fundamental serious flaws with this movie? Absolutely. So I'm kind of right down the middle with it. I'm jumping to the rating right now. I'm going to give it, I think, a 5. Maybe if you catch me on a good day, I would give it a 6 because there was some really entertaining moments in it. But yeah, there was some fundamental flaws as far as there being no suspense or horror in a horror movie. I've used this example before, but it's like if there was a comedy without any jokes, is it a comedy anymore? No, it's a drama. And this movie's kind of a drama with a lot of gore. And is that a bad thing? Not necessarily, but if you were trying to make something horrifying, you failed. And also, you know, coming from the perspective of it's the killer, you lose a lot of story that could be there because a lot of character development that could be spent on these characters so we'd care if they live or die is spent instead, this runtime is spent showing him walking around. And I don't hate that choice. It's a very bold choice. I don't hate it though if you fully committed, but there are times when they switch the perspective of people and it's like, well, what was the whole point of making this movie from the POV of a bad guy, from the killer, if you're going to cheat and not do that for the entire film? Because there's a few scenes where they switch it up and it's like, well, and you kind of defeated the purpose. And within those scenes, you start to have people start having really bad explanations, like really bad exposition of some backstory, some exposition of who this guy is and where he came from. And it's like, I wanted nothing more than to not know anything. And you can give hints. Like in the first scene, you see there's something with a necklace. It's like, ooh, that's interesting. That has some connection to this bad guy. Well, okay. I didn't need then, therefore, your explanation of it. I just wanted this guy to be a ripoff of Friday the 13th, you know, be an undead guy killing people. I did not need to know why. I did not need to know motivation. I did not need to know backstory. I just wanted him killing people. And there, unfortunately, to me, was a waste of time and effort trying to explain stuff sloppily. And it's not just that all of the dialogue in this movie sucks. I think there was probably 2 good actors in this movie, and part of that I'm sure is budget, part of that is bad dialogue, bad writing, and part of it is that it's just D-list actors. There is nobody, okay, 2 people, like I said, in this movie that were talented. One of the kids, and then the lady in the truck. Those were the only 2 people in this movie that knew how to act, and it's like that kind of just, it makes the writing look worse and the bad writing makes the acting look worse. It's the chicken and the egg. It's all bad. It was all bad on that front. So I'd be curious though to see what this director could do with a bigger budget and maybe a co-writer, somebody to help him. And to be fair, the bad, ridiculously bad dialogue in this movie could have been done in parody, in homage. It could have been an homage to these slasher films of the 80s that had terrible dialogue. Maybe that's what they were going for. I'm not sure. I don't know if it was intentional or if it wasn't. If it was intentional, it was kind of funny a little bit, and if it wasn't intentional, it was terrible. Either way, it doesn't really affect my rating that much. I think either way, it was fine. It was straight down the middle. I will say, camera work was great. I really love the cinematography. I liked the look of the villain. I thought he was cool. Like I said, I wish I knew less about him, but I still thought he was a cool character. There is one scene that involves him and, like, car keys that kind of made everything worth it. It made making this film worth it just for that scene, in my opinion. I'll get into that in spoilers in a minute. But if that was the only thing we got out of making this movie, the movie was worth making it for that scene. I thought the kills were creative. I did think they kind of got less creative as they went. There was one that everybody's been talking about that I thought was cool. I thought the acting involved in it was so bad that it kind of took away from it a little bit. So I will say the kills are cool. People are really talking about them, and I don't think, I think they're good. People are acting like it's great, and I think they were good. I think they were solid. I thought they were interesting and creative and unique, but some of them are really let down by the effects. Some of them are really let down by poor acting. So overall, I think they were good, not great. This movie, to me, is just so much potential. It wasn't, to me, like a finished product. It's not fine art. It's not finely tuned. Like I said, this reminded me of a lot of stuff I've seen in festivals. And I'm not talking like Sundance. I'm not talking like really big festivals. I'm talking like the local indie ones that I've been to. That's what it reminded me of. Bigger budget, but still in that range. And so I want to see what this director can do when given more to work with, because I think it could be good, but this wasn't, if that makes sense. Like, there's potential, but not a finely tuned product. I don't know, I forget who edited it. But the editing was terrible. The editing was awful. There was like one shot early on where, okay, so you saw it in the trailer. If you've seen the trailer, is him walking a lot, and they kind of just cut from him walking to him walking somewhere else to him walking somewhere else, and that's fine when we're doing a montage of walking. But there's like early on, like I think maybe the first kill of this movie, you see him walking down and around this hill toward these two characters talking in a house, and you hear their conversation loud and clear. It's a constant thing throughout this movie for some reason, that no matter how far somebody is away, you can hear them talking perfectly. I didn't like that choice, but regardless, during this walk, you're having this conversation play, and that's where the anticipation is building. Is, oh, they don't know he's there, they don't know he's there, what's gonna happen, how is he gonna mangle them to pieces, it's gonna be so fun. And as he's walking, they're cutting like him closer and then closer, and it's like the whole reason for this shot is to build anticipation, and you are cutting that anticipation by cutting forward in time. And I get it, they had a shot that was longer than the audio they had for that shot. That's what happened. As an editor, I know exactly what happened. They ran out of dialogue and the shot was too long. They mistimed it. Oops, what do? You cut off from the beginning, because you can't cut off from the end, and you don't want to splice throughout, because like I said, that alleviates all tension, all suspense build. And that's what they did. And it's frustrating where it's like, I don't know exactly what the timing would have looked like if they cut off from the beginning of that shot, but that's what they should have at least tried. And if they couldn't make it work, then come up with something else. But the splicing throughout, having him jump forward as the dialogue is not jumping forward, is just so bad. It's so frustrating. And there's multiple really bad editing choices throughout this film, including at one point, like, I don't know if the camera was like on wheels or whatever, it was just shaking, like vibrating like this. And I don't know. I don't know what they edited on, but on Premiere Pro, you can just punch in and, you know, Steadicam it in post and get rid of that. Why didn't you? It looked terrible. So, some pretty bad editing. But overall, like I said, a unique idea, a unique concept, a unique execution. I want to see more. Would I suggest this movie to the average person? No. Just to film buffs or filmmakers, because they'll find it interesting, the process, the ideas that they were trying to execute. I don't want to compare it directly to Boyhood, because Boyhood was a better made movie, but Boyhood was a similar thing where it's like, oh, this is a concept, let's try something, see if it works. Or Rope, Alfred Hitchcock, you know, where like, let's try something unique and different that nobody's ever done before. Rope kind of failed with that, but then years later, you know, Birdman, they did it perfectly, and then 1917 copied them and did it okay, and then got all the credit for some reason. And so it's like, I'm not saying that this can't work, but it didn't yet. And so maybe somebody else needs to do it, or maybe they just need a little more practice to figure it out. I'm grateful that it was attempted, though, because it was creative, it was unique, and I enjoyed it. So even though I give it a 5 to a 6, I enjoyed it for what it was and what it was trying, if that makes sense. I'm gonna get into spoilers now, so if you don't want anything spoiled, you should click away, go watch it, come back, and we can talk about it then. But please remember to like, share. If you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye. So, spoilers. Yeah, a few fundamental issues that I have with this. But actually, you know what? Before I get into the issues, the cool thing that I was talking about with the keys. So, we find out partial truths about this character, and like I said, I wish we just didn't know anything. I wish they just pulled up the necklace and we spent the rest of the movie killing them for taking the necklace. I didn't need to know that he was maybe an autistic kid who was killed and then came back to life, and then his parents was getting, he killed it. I didn't need to know any of that. I didn't need to know the cheesy flashback of him staring into the picture frame or the mirror or whatever and be like, this necklace is for you. I didn't need that. I can assume that. But the one moment, the one scene that was, to me, by far the best moment in this whole movie was the one character throws away the other character's keys and he picks it up because it's got a toy car on it. And he just all of a sudden forgets about murder for a minute. And he sits down and starts playing with the toy car. And that was such a great moment. It's the first time you see his face in the whole movie. So well directed, so well acted. Like I already said, the camera work in this movie is great. But that moment in particular, just everything came together. By far the best scene in the movie. And to me, like I said, if we were going to gain any one moment from this movie, it's that moment. It was great, and I loved that. I loved that little tiny detail about the character. And like I said, that works without the backstory. We don't need to know why he did that. That moment by itself could have been cool, and the more we talked about him, the more they had this backstory, the less I cared, the less I liked the actor, or the character. The actor was fine. I didn't need to know these details. Like, I didn't. I don't need that backstory. This character's already clearly, like, if you watch the trailer, it's very much seems like they wanted to make a Friday the 13th movie and then couldn't secure the rights to it, so they just went, close enough, this guy. And that's fine. That's all he had to be. We didn't need to know anything else. He could have just been a dude killing people in gruesome ways. But yes, so I do agree, there's a lot of walking, a lot of nothing, very little suspense involved because of that. And also, like I was saying, they cut away to other characters at times. Like, the whole last bit of this movie is he's going to town, really axing this guy's face, so she decides to run away, and for the next 15-20 minutes we're on her running through the woods and then getting into a truck, and you keep waiting for him to come and kill her. You keep waiting and waiting and waiting, and then he never does, and we cut back to where the necklace was last seen and it's gone. Cut to credits, and it's like, that was the most suspenseful we got, but it feels like a cheat because it's like the whole point of this movie was his POV, and now we're not seeing his POV. We're going back to a traditional horror movie, and it's like, that's kind of, I don't know, I didn't like that. Like, the whole point, to me at least, was it was like a challenge, like how to make a movie in this box. And then they broke out of the box for a couple of scenes. There's also this really obnoxious scene where all the kids are talking around a campfire, and I just, like, it was such bad acting and such bad writing. I get it. The point is, you're not supposed to like any of these characters. You're kind of happy when they all die because they're so obnoxious and terrible, but it's like, I don't know if this person, like, unless this was a parody, like he was parodying stereotypes, I don't think this guy's, unless that's the case, I don't think this guy's ever talked to a human in his life, because this is not how humans talk. So either it's really subtle satire or terrible writing, and I'm not sure which it is. Like I said, it doesn't really affect my opinion on the movie that much either way, because either way, it was just a mediocre movie. If it was really subtle satire, I'd be like, huh, okay, interesting. And if it's really bad acting and writing, then go, huh, okay, wish that was better. It's just like a huh in either direction. It doesn't really change that much. So, yeah, my biggest pet peeve, though, is I just wish I didn't know these people's backstories. And I guess my second biggest issue with the movie is the budget, which isn't their fault. It's just a fact, you know, it's just a thing that they had to deal with. But, like, yeah, I know they were doing really cool practical effects, but at times the effects let them down, you know? Like, there's one point where he smashes a guy's head with an axe, and it looked really fake. It looked like something you'd see in the 80s or something. There's you know, multiple times where it's like the first kill that you really see on camera, he's got some sort of saw and he's like cutting through a guy's face, and it very clearly is just like a guy with fake blood coming out of his mouth while you hear like cracking sounds, and the next shot, oh, now it's a double. And it was a good double. It actually looked good. That was the best fake body they had in the whole movie, I thought. And there was a lot of great comedy with it. He like threw the body to break glass. And he's like, oh, there's the mask I need. Body through the glass. I'll take this. That was hilarious. I love that. But yeah, some of the effects just didn't look good. And some of it was also, I guess, like the acting I mentioned, where there's a really famous death that everybody's talking about, very gruesome. He stabs this girl in the stomach with a hook, pushes the hook all the way through her, turns around, grabs the hook from the other side, stabs it in her head, turns her back around, and pulls the hook until her head comes and she's like a pretzel. And it's like, oh, that's fun and gruesome, but like she didn't do anything. And it had to be the directing, because they're like, how do we make this practical without her like screaming or running or moving at all? And so her reaction is just nothing. She gets stabbed in the stomach and she goes like, ah, and then spins around. Huh. She gets stabbed in the head. Now she's dead, so she doesn't have to react anymore. But the whole time she's just like, what is happening? I can't believe, oh no. Like, just no reaction at all. It was just terrible. And then, also from a directing perspective, there's like this ranger guy who, I guess he got paralyzed, but all we see is he's fighting, and then like the guy grabs his back and you hear a crunch, and he goes, ah! Which was just comedic because it was so silly and stupid looking. And then he stops moving. And I'm like, is he pretending to be dead? Turns out he was paralyzed, but I had no way of knowing, because I thought he just grabbed his back. Like, how do you break somebody's spine by grabbing their back? I know this guy's like a Jason or a Freddy or somebody like that, but like, I don't know, he didn't do anything. So, I don't know. But overall, like I said, it was fine. And I think this was an experiment. And I'm glad the experiment was conducted, because it proved some points both directions of, ooh, we can try new weird things, and oh, maybe we shouldn't try this exact weird thing. So, I don't know, like I said, some good, some bad. It is more, to me, just interesting than anything. Like I said, I'm fascinated by the process they went through to get these results. I don't know that I would personally have made the decisions they did, but you know what? There's a million different ways to make a movie, okay? And you know, every filmmaker has their own unique, different ideas, and that's what makes it so fun and interesting across the board in all forms of art and artistic endeavors. So, yeah, I'm interested in whatever this guy does next, because there's some definite creativity in there. Do I think he needs a co-writer? Probably. Do I think he needs a bigger budget or some help with this direction? Maybe, but this guy, he's got something going for him. So I give him props for that, and like I said, I'm interested to see whatever he wants to do next. So that's what I had to think. Kind of a mixed bag, but definitely an interesting experience. I'm not mad I saw it. I'm not going to write home about it, but I'm glad I saw it. So, what did you think? If you've seen it, let me know in the comments below. And, of course, don't forget to like, share. If you're new here, subscribe. Thanks, guys. Bye.